voices you're about to hear didn't just entertain millions. They changed American music forever. Some were born from struggle. Others emerged from moments of inspiration that lasted only a few minutes, yet echoed across generations. Behind every unforgettable melody is a story that history almost forgot. Welcome back to R&B Zoom, where we uncover the untold stories behind the music that shaped generations. Today we're counting down 10 of the most played R&B and soul songs released between 1960 and 1970, revealing the real events, remarkable people, and extraordinary moments that turned them into legends. Number 10. Chain Gang, 1960. Sam Cooke.
Sound of the men working on the chain.
Few songs in American music history began with a sound as unforgettable as the rhythmic ho-ah echo that opens Chain Gang. To millions, it sounded like a catchy hook. But for Sam Cooke, it represented something far more powerful, a painful reminder of lives spent in forced labor under brutal conditions.
Hey, that's the sound of the men working on the...
During one of his concert tours in early 1960, Cooke reportedly passed a highway work crew made up of prison inmates. As he watched the men swinging heavy tools in perfect rhythm under armed supervision, the repetitive sound of metal striking pavement stayed with him long after the bus disappeared down the road. That haunting image followed him back to the piano. Rather than writing a protest anthem, Cooke transformed the experience into a deeply human story. He blended gospel emotion with smooth pop production, allowing listeners to feel compassion without preaching. The song's emotional balance became one of its greatest strengths, making difficult subject matter accessible to audiences across America. Released in the summer of 1960, Chain Gang climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of Sam Cooke's biggest crossover successes. It sold more than 1 million copies, helping establish him as one of the first black artists to dominate both pop and R&B audiences simultaneously. More than 6 decades later, its message remains just as moving, proving that great music can carry history inside every note.
Gang, that's the sound of the...
Number 9. Stand By Me, 1961. Ben E. King.
I won't be afraid.
Some songs become wedding favorites. Others become national anthems during times of crisis. Stand By Me somehow became both, but its journey began with an unfinished gospel melody that refused to disappear. Before recording as a solo artist, Ben E. King had been singing with the Drifters. During songwriting sessions with legendary producers Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller, King recalled an old spiritual called Lord Stand By Me. The melody had stayed with him since childhood, and together they began reshaping it into something modern, without losing its emotional foundation. The recording session itself became a masterclass in restraint. Instead of overwhelming listeners with elaborate orchestration, the musicians focused on simplicity. The instantly recognizable bass line anchored the record, while King's calm, reassuring vocal created the feeling of one trusted friend speaking directly to another. Every musical decision served the song's central message: loyalty in uncertain times. When Stand By Me was released in 1961, it reached the top 5 in America and quickly became one of the defining recordings of the decade. Remarkably, the song returned to the charts 25 years later, after the release of the hit film of the same name, introducing an entirely new generation to Ben E. King's timeless performance. Today it remains one of the most licensed, covered, streamed, and celebrated songs in music history, a testament to the enduring power of a simple promise: no matter what comes, stand by me. Number 8. My Girl, 1964. The Temptations. In late 1964, The Temptations were one of Motown's hardest-working groups, but success still seemed just out of reach. They had scored respectable records, yet they still lacked the one signature hit that could separate them from every other vocal group coming out of Detroit. Behind the scenes, Motown founder Berry Gordy wanted something unforgettable. Songwriters Smokey Robinson and Ronald White believed they had exactly the record the group had been waiting for. Smokey Robinson had someone very specific in mind when he wrote the song. For years, Paul Williams and Eddie Kendricks had handled most of the Temptations' lead vocals. Robinson, however, believed David Ruffin possessed a raw emotional power unlike anyone else in the group. Ruffin had spent months asking Robinson for a chance to sing lead. Robinson finally agreed, but he warned him that if he got the opportunity, he had to make history with it. The recording session at Motown's Studio A became one of the label's defining moments. Before a single lyric was sung, legendary bassist James Jamerson introduced a smooth bass line that instantly captured everyone's attention. Guitarist Robert White followed with one of the most recognizable guitar introductions ever recorded. When Ruffin finally stepped to the microphone and delivered "I've Got Sunshine" on a cloudy day, everyone inside the studio knew something extraordinary had just happened. Even before the final playback ended, musicians reportedly smiled at one another because they realized they had witnessed the birth of a classic. Released in December 1964, My Girl became the Temptations' first #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100 and also topped the R&B chart. The recording transformed David Ruffin into one of Motown's defining voices and established the Temptations as international stars. More than 60 years later, its opening notes remain instantly recognizable across generations, proving that sometimes a single opportunity and a single performance can change an entire career forever. Number 7. In the Midnight Hour, 1965, Wilson Pickett. By the spring of 1965, Wilson Pickett had already built a reputation as one of soul music's fiercest singers. His voice carried the intensity of gospel, the grit of rhythm and blues, and the confidence of someone who refused to be ignored. Yet despite his talent, he still needed the record that would define his legacy. That opportunity arrived when Atlantic Records sent him to Memphis to record with the legendary musicians at Stax Studios. When there's no one else around, chemistry began almost immediately. Guitarist Steve Cropper spent hours studying Pickett's earlier gospel recordings before the session, searching for a phrase that captured the singer's emotional fire. One lyric kept returning to him, a reference to the midnight hour. Cropper suggested turning the religious phrase into a story about romance, and together they began building what would become one of soul music's greatest recordings. The writing happened quickly, but the magic came from the musicians inside the room, each contributing ideas in real time. Nobody around, baby, just you and I. During recording, Atlantic executive Jerry Wexler wanted the rhythm section to feel different from anything currently on radio. According to those present, Wexler demonstrated a popular dance called the jerk, encouraging drummer Al Jackson Jr. to push the snare harder on beats 2 and 4. Jackson immediately understood the groove. Combined with Duck Dunn's bass, Booker T. Jones's organ, Cropper's guitar, and Pickett's explosive vocal, the session produced a sound that helped define Southern soul for the next decade. Released in the summer of 1965, In the Midnight Hour climbed to #1 on the Billboard R&B chart and reached the top 25 of the Billboard Hot 100. It became Wilson Pickett's breakthrough recording, launching a remarkable run of hit singles and influencing generations of rock, soul, and blues performers. Decades later, the song has been preserved by the Library of Congress for its cultural significance, a reminder that one unforgettable groove recorded in Memphis forever changed the sound of American music. I'm gonna take you, girl, and hold you. Number 6. When a Man Loves a Woman, 1966. Percy Sledge. Before Percy Sledge became one of the defining voices of Southern soul, he was earning a living as a hospital orderly in Sheffield, Alabama. During the day, he cared for patients. At night, he sang with local bands across the Muscle Shoals region, hoping someone in the audience might notice. Fame wasn't part of his daily reality. Music was simply the place where he poured everything he couldn't say anywhere else. Then life dealt him a devastating blow. After his longtime girlfriend ended their relationship, Sledge found himself performing only days later with a heavy heart. Instead of sticking to the usual set list, he abandoned the planned lyrics and began singing directly from his emotions. His band struggled to keep up because they had never heard the melody before. Audience members didn't realize they were witnessing the birth of a future classic. The words weren't polished. They were painfully real. That raw performance became the emotional blueprint for what would later become When a Man Loves a Woman.
If she said that's the way it all.
Producer Quinn Ivey immediately recognized that the song carried something no studio could manufacture: genuine heartbreak. The recording took place at Nirala Sound Studio before being sent to Atlantic Records. Although Jerry Wexler loved the performance, he felt the horn arrangement lacked precision and ordered changes before release. The emotional core, however, remained untouched. Sledge's voice cracked in places, stretched beyond perfection in others, and those imperfections became the song's greatest strength. Rather than correcting every flaw, the producers preserved the vulnerability that listeners would instantly recognize. Released in March 1966, the record reached #1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart, making Percy Sledge an international star almost overnight. It became one of the defining love songs of the 20th century, and later earned induction into the Grammy Hall of Fame. More than 50 years later, it continues to soundtrack weddings, films, and unforgettable moments, because listeners don't hear a performance. They hear a man reliving one of the hardest days of his life. Number 5, Respect, 1967, Aretha Franklin. When Aretha Franklin arrived at Atlantic Records in late 1966, many people believed they already knew what kind of artist she was. After 6 frustrating years at Columbia Records, she had released beautiful music, but had never been given complete creative freedom. Producer Jerry Wexler saw something different. Instead of telling her what to sing, he handed her the keys to the studio and trusted her instincts. That decision would change music history. The song she chose wasn't originally hers. 2 years earlier, Otis Redding had written Respect, from the perspective of a hard-working man asking for appreciation when he returned home. Aretha heard something entirely different inside those lyrics. She imagined the song through the voice of a woman demanding dignity, equality, and recognition. Before the recording session even began, she worked through the arrangement with her sisters Carolyn and Irma Franklin, carefully reshaping every phrase until it reflected her own vision rather than simply covering someone else's hit. Inside Atlantic's New York studio in February 1967, everything came together. Carolyn Franklin contributed the unforgettable phrase, "Sock it to me," while Aretha transformed the chorus forever by spelling out RESPECT, letter by letter. It wasn't planned as a political statement, yet the timing could not have been more powerful. At a moment when America was confronting civil rights struggles and the growing women's movement, the song suddenly became an anthem for both. Even Otis Redding later admitted, with admiration, that Aretha had taken the song and completely made it her own. Released in April 1967, Respect shot to #1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart, winning 2 Grammy Awards and becoming the defining record of Aretha Franklin's career. Decades later, it remains one of the most celebrated songs ever recorded, regularly appearing near the top of critics' lists of the greatest recordings in history. More than a hit record, Respect became a cultural landmark, proof that one extraordinary performance can transform not only a song, but the conversation of an entire generation. Number 4. Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay, 1968, Otis Redding.
Wasting time.
the summer of 1967, Otis Redding had conquered nearly every stage imaginable. His electrifying performance at the Monterey Pop Festival introduced him to a massive rock audience, proving that soul music could captivate listeners far beyond the R&B charts. Yet behind the applause and constant touring, Redding was exhausted. For the first time in years, he stepped away from the road, renting a houseboat in Sausalito, California, where the quiet waters of San Francisco Bay offered something he rarely experienced: silence.
I left my home.
Each morning he sat alone, watching ferries drift across the harbor, while seagulls circled overhead. Friends later recalled that Redding seemed unusually reflective, no longer interested in writing energetic stage anthems. Instead, he began scribbling lyrics on scraps of paper, hotel stationery, and napkins. Guitarist Steve Cropper helped shape the melody as Redding hummed the opening line, "Sittin' in the morning sun." It was unlike anything he had ever written. Gone were the powerful shouts and driving rhythms. In their place was a man quietly reflecting on life, success, and uncertainty. The recording sessions at Stax Studios in Memphis during November and December 1967 revealed an artist moving into completely new territory. Cropper remembered that the song wasn't entirely finished. Redding planned to return after a hunting trip to complete the final verse. Instead, on December 10, 1967, tragedy struck. Redding's Beechcraft H-18 crashed into the icy waters of Lake Monona near Madison, Wisconsin, killing him and most of the members of his backing band, the Bar-Kays. He was only 26 years old. Soul music had lost one of its brightest stars before he could hear what would become his greatest achievement.
The ships roll in, and then
Steve Cropper completed the recording exactly as Redding had described, adding the sound of waves and seagulls during the fade-out to recreate the peaceful atmosphere of the California harbor. Released in January 1968, "Sittin' On the Dock of the Bay" became the first posthumous single to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It also topped the R&B chart, won 2 Grammy Awards, and has since been preserved by the Library of Congress. More than half a century later, the song remains both a masterpiece and a heartbreaking reminder of the extraordinary music Otis Redding still had left to create. Number 3. I Heard It Through the Grapevine, 1968. Marvin Gaye. Some of the greatest songs in history succeed immediately. Others fight for survival. I Heard It Through the Grapevine spent nearly 2 years being rejected before it became one of Motown's biggest triumphs. The journey began in 1966 when songwriter Barrett Strong and producer Norman Whitfield presented the song to Motown founder Berry Gordy. Gordy wasn't convinced. He believed the record lacked the commercial spark needed for a hit and refused to release it. Whitfield refused to give up. He first recorded the song with Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, but Gordy rejected that version as well. Determined to prove his instincts were right, Whitfield brought Marvin Gaye into the studio. Across multiple recording sessions in early 1967, Gaye delivered a darker, more emotionally complex performance than anyone expected. Once again, Berry Gordy said no. Instead, Whitfield produced a faster version with Gladys Knight and the Pips, which finally earned Gordy's approval. Released in 1967, their recording became a major hit, reaching #1 on the R&B chart and #2 on the Billboard Hot 100. For most producers, that would have ended the story. Norman Whitfield had other plans. Quietly, he placed Marvin Gaye's rejected recording on Gaye's 1968 album, In the Groove. Something remarkable happened. Radio disc jockeys across America ignored the official singles and began playing the album track instead. Phone lines lit up as listeners demanded to know who was singing the slower, haunting version. The overwhelming response forced Berry Gordy to reconsider. The very recording he had rejected twice was suddenly the one audiences wanted most. Released as a single in October 1968, Marvin Gaye's I Heard It Through the Grapevine reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. remaining there for 7 consecutive weeks. It became Motown's biggest selling single to that point, selling more than 4 million copies worldwide. The song transformed Marvin Gaye from a successful Motown artist into one of the label's defining superstars, and demonstrated an enduring truth about music history. Sometimes audiences recognize greatness long before executives do. Number 2. Everyday People, 1968. Sly and the Family Stone. By the end of 1968, America was a nation struggling to recognize itself. The assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, protests over the Vietnam War, and deep racial divisions had left the country emotionally exhausted. Television screens showed violence almost every evening, while communities across the nation searched for something, anything, that could remind people they still had more in common than they realized. In the middle of that uncertainty stood a band unlike any the music industry had ever seen. Led by Sly Stone, Sly and the Family Stone wasn't just another successful soul group. It was one of the first major American bands made up of black and white musicians, men and women, all performing together as equals. That lineup alone challenged the expectations of the late 1960s. Sly believed the band itself should represent the future he hoped music could help create. Instead of writing another dance record, he chose to write about unity, not through politics, but through ordinary human relationships. The result was a song built around one unforgettable line: different strokes for different folks. The recording reflected that philosophy. Larry Graham's revolutionary bass playing gave the record an irresistible groove, while Rosie Stone, Freddie Stone, Cynthia Robinson, Greg Errico, and Jerry Martini layered vocals and instrumentation into a sound that felt joyful without ignoring reality. Rather than pretending differences didn't exist, the song acknowledged them openly before delivering its timeless message. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of race, background, or beliefs. It was an incredibly simple idea, but in 1968, it carried enormous cultural weight. Released in November 1968, Everyday People reached number 1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart, becoming the band's biggest crossover success. More than half a century later, its message remains as relevant as ever. Countless artists have sampled it, quoted it, and performed it because its optimism never grows old. Sometimes the most powerful protest isn't shouted through anger, it is sung through hope. Number 1. Signed, Sealed, Delivered. I'm Yours, 1970. Stevie Wonder. In 1970, Stevie Wonder was at a turning point unlike any other artist at Motown. The child prodigy, who had amazed audiences with Fingertips years earlier, was now 20 years old, determined to prove he was far more than a gifted performer. He wanted creative control. He wanted to write, produce, arrange, and shape his own sound. Motown had built an empire by carefully managing its artists, but Stevie believed the next chapter of his career had to belong to him. The idea for Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours came together during one of the most creative periods of his life. Working closely with producer Lee Garrett, Syreeta Wright, and Lula Mae Hardaway, his mother, Stevie assembled a song that combined gospel energy, pop melodies, and infectious soul rhythms. He experimented with vocal textures, hand claps, and layered harmonies, creating a record that sounded brighter, freer, and more confident than anything he had previously released. Behind the scenes, the song also marked one of the earliest moments when Motown executives realized Stevie was becoming an exceptional producer in his own right. The recording sessions showcased his remarkable musical instincts. Rather than simply singing over the band, Stevie directed every detail, from the rhythmic feel to the vocal arrangements. His harmonica, piano work, and unmistakable voice blended into a performance bursting with joy and confidence. Listeners weren't just hearing another hit single. They were witnessing the arrival of an artist taking full ownership of his future. It was the beginning of the creative independence, that would later produce albums like Music of My Mind, Inner Visions, and Songs in the Key of Life. Released in June 1970, Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart, becoming one of Stevie Wonder's signature recordings. More importantly, it announced a new era, not only for Stevie, but for Motown itself. Within just a few years, he negotiated one of the most groundbreaking creative contracts in music history, giving him unprecedented artistic freedom. That decision changed the course of popular music, influencing generations of artists who followed.
In this old world,